Yeah, hope
There.
everything's okay on your end.
Yeah,
We
man.
talked about
Just
before the call.
yeah. We should be good to go. I just, when you have like a bunch of fires at the same time that you're trying to solve, and it's like, but we're here, we're ready, we're good to go. How are you doing? I haven't talked to you in a minute.
Yeah, it's just fine. The weather is cold again up here in Canada. It snowed a bit. It's not spring yet. They thought it was spring, but it's still cold. Most of the snow has melted, and
Okay.
the election kicked off as of
Oh
yeah, as of last Sunday.
yeah.
So it started.
Yeah, we might want to talk about that. I just for people coming in, I just add any title. Uh and my goal is always to make a title that makes me laugh. So free my boy Harry made me laugh. SignalGate also made me laugh. So that's why it's there. But if this is your first time joining us, hi, this is Baz. This is Afternoon Tea in Politics. We usually get people. Oh, what did I just guess? Get. Uh, duh, duh, duh. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I got a weird message. Welcome to Afternoon Tea in Politics. This is my name is Baz. I run the Split Ticket. Hi, Denise. Hi, Free Dream. Welcome, folks. I usually do this every day. I haven't been doing it the past couple of days because I got pneumonia, which sucks. Welcome, Ben. Welcome, Carol. Like I said, I got pneumonia. That was terrible. So I wasn't able to do any lives the past couple of days. But I'm back. We're here now. We're ready to go. We're ready to fight. And today I've got with me Canadian returnee. Is one of my favorite people here on Substack. Really great for Canadian politics, and just great for politics in general. If you haven't subscribed to him, give him a subscribe at CanadianReturnee.substack.com, and feel free to subscribe to me, Baz, the Split Ticket.substack.com. Canadian returnee, I see that you're testing, and you're good. You're good to go. Canadian, how are you doing, man?
Yeah, I've been great. Yeah, as I said before, the general election in Canada has kicked off. So the candidates we have are from the Liberal Party. It's Mark Carney. He replaced Trudeau in a Liberal Party leadership race after
Yeah.
Trudeau agreed to step down due to just a lot of negative baggage from his 10 years. Like, there was some good, of course, 10 years of being prime minister. And
Yeah.
in the face of Trump's antics, the opposition party is Pierre Poilievre from the Conservatives. He's more of a right-wing populist in with light shades of maple MAGA or like Trump-style politics,
Oh
as they
wow.
call it.
What's his
Then
name?
yeah, Pierre Poilievre.
Pierre
He
Paul.
was actually indirectly supported by Trump's people indirectly. And also, the
Really?
premier of Alberta, Daniel Smith, asked, you probably read about this, he asked the US government or some officials in the Trump administration to back down on the tariffs to help give Pierre and the conservatives a chance in the upcoming election. So that's kind of a scandal right now that kicked off in the first week of campaigning. And then you have the
Hilarious.
third party, that's the New Democrat Party. They're close. They're being led by Yagmeet Singh. They're closer to what Bernie Sanders and AOC are trying to do, like relatively close, in the sense that they are supposed to be pro-union, the party of the working middle class, and trying to do a little bit of social democracy in Canada. While the Liberal Party is more like center-left, moderate liberals,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and then
we've got
and
it's
then you have the other two parties like Bloc Québécois. They're the Quebec sovereigntists or separatist party. Their main focus is getting Quebec out of Canada to become an independent country. But in
okay.
practice, they're effectively a regional party that just advances Quebec's interests and the French
Okay.
language in Quebec, in Canada. And
Well,
then
we
lastly, there's the Green Party. They have about one or two seats, and they're like basically progressive, pro environment, maybe some pacifism, but they're mostly have one or two seats in like British Columbia.
well we've got a lot like that. That does sound super interesting. I mean, this has been a lot. There's been a lot of news over the weekend, and like I was telling people, hi Helen, hi everybody, hi Caddy, hi Jenny, hi
Hey
Maureen,
everyone.
Cheryl, hey everybody. Like I was saying, I was super sick, so I missed out on a lot of discussion and a lot of like interesting news. So yeah, we've got a lot to cover. I mean, the biggest news story though over the weekend was the the war chat incident. That was so interesting. And in Canadian, you were telling me they had some interesting reactions to that in Canada, right?
Yep. So basically, Mark Carney, when he was asked about it, he briefly, this was like paraphrasing from The Guardian. He was saying that this was basically an indication that the U.S. isn't a reliable partner, that Canada is essentially on their own. That was the gist of it. I'm just gonna go pull the article.
Yeah, no, this was a crazy
Yeah,
weekend.
Carney said it was a serious issue, and all lessons must be taken. He said it would be critical to see how people react to these mistakes and how they tighten up. But in essence, it's just saying, look out for ourselves. When then we asked about his relationship with the U.S., he said, "My responsibility is to plan for the worst, to think about the most difficult evolution of the new threat environment, what it means for Canada, and how do we best protect Canada."
Yeah, so
Yeah, there's
for
more.
go
There's
ahead.
more to that. I'll can share the Guardian link on the live chat for
Yeah,
those who
no,
want to
please
read it.
please do that. Um, yeah, it's been crazy. For those of you just joining us, SignalGate is what we're referring to. If you're not familiar with that, there was some leaks over the weekend from a. I keep getting a message here. Okay, sorry, I keep getting a message here. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. I hope everyone
Okay.
can hear me loud
Yeah,
and clear as
yeah.
well.
So basically, top intelligence officials who were part of a group chat on Signal were discussing U.S. military plans to strike Houthi targets in Yemen, and they somehow leaked those chats to um, a top, or I think the editor in chief, the journalist, editor in chief of the Atlantic,
Yes,
which was I don't really know. I don't really have words for this.
they
Um,
literally invited him to a chat with like the administration, like the Trump administration officials, coordinating policy and
yeah,
discussing plans to attack the Houthis in Yemen on
yeah.
Signal instead of doing it through a secure channel, and where
Yeah,
these things can be recorded in per federal law.
yeah. I've never seen like it's kind of getting.
I guess you could
Go ahead.
compare it. It's like if the Empire was building a Death Star and they accidentally invited Princess Leia or Luke Skywalker into like their chat, and yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
So the editor in chief of the Atlantic Monthly, I think it's Jeffrey Goldberg is the guy's
Yeah,
name.
that's his name.
So this story gets published on Monday. Massive Trump administration security breach. A reporter asked the Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth why he had shared plans, and I remember he answered, "Nobody was texting war plans." And that's all I have to say about that. Fast forward to today, and we see the actual play-by-play. I mean, this is
Yeah,
some
he
remarkable
lied.
stuff.
It just yeah, he lied, and
Yeah.
the Atlantic decided to release the
The entire
entire
group
text and
chat.
context just to cover their end, and
Yeah,
after the fact, when there's no longer anyone in danger of those
yeah,
kinds of information leaking out.
and thank God landed with someone like Jeffrey Goldberg and not someone who may have had more nefarious interests.
Like a
But
vlogger, like an influencer. And then the worst part is
anybody,
one of the people in the chat was physically in Russia. I think it was Steve Witkoff.
holy moly!
And then
Oh,
he
I
was
didn't know
looped
that.
in, and I'm sure the Russians have a way to like intercept some of those communications. It's
Yeah,
a
no,
mess.
it's a huge mess. I'm getting tired of saying I've never seen. I mean, this has been a really weird 10 years in politics. But at a Senate hearing yesterday, the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and the director of the CIA, John Radcliffe, were both asked about the chat. To which Goldberg, who again the editor in chief of the Atlantic, was invited by the NSA, the National Security Advisor, Michael Waltz, And there was Gabbard says at the intelligence committee there was no classified material that was shared in that Signal group, and Radcliffe said pretty much the same. Then they posted the chat.
Yeah, it's all in contract. They all lied, or they didn't know what was going on.
They posted the chat. And by the way, welcome everybody. Welcome Chuck. Welcome Dorothy, Susan, Christina, Maria, Howie, Pat, Jenny, Kathy, Maureen, Cheryl, Kathleen, Karen. Welcome to everybody.
Welcome everyone.
There's a lot of people here, so shout out to y'all. I mean, man, I struggle to find words for this because I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to even say.
It's basically, if it's not obvious, the wrong people were given the job and they weren't responsible. If this happened in a private company, the person would be terminated with cause.
Oh, absolutely.
So they did something unethical. It was conduct that was unbecoming of like employee or contractor. No severance, and they wouldn't even get an employment in the U.S. and it'd be very hard for them to like qualify for employment insurance in Canada.
I mean, I talked
that happened in a private company. Like,
I mean, I talked about this with a friend of mine. She, one of the consistent themes, and she's an account here on Substack. You should go follow her. Her name is Raj, but I think her username is something else. But anyways, Raj is really great with politics. Definitely give her a follow. But one of the overarching themes of this entire administration seems to be just nihilism. And one of the things we discussed was, or one of the things that I brought up specifically is the fact that if you don't get rid of this person, okay, what we have right now is Elon Musk firing thousands of people who didn't necessarily do anything wrong. But if Trump won't fire anyone after this SignalGate, the message to me is that accountability is only for people at the bottom, right? People at the top can get away with anything. And if that's true, the ideology at work here isn't necessarily meritocracy, right? Like that's what everybody keeps talking about: meritocracy. But in fact, it's just nihilism.
Pure loyalty, and then it's just whatever the people on top believe is loyalty or productivity. It's very subjective, and if you work in a toxic company, you'll know where this is going.
Yeah, and this is what's really tough for me. Like as you mentioned, Canadian, you wouldn't get away with this in a regular job. You would never get away with this. You would never get away with this,
unless the company is very toxic and the manager is willing to like overlook it. But if you're someone who's not favored in the team, then they'll just place the blame on you and throw you under the bus.
Yeah, and arbitrary sees. It seems like these people always use Signal to communicate, not following security protocols. Yeah, and by the way, Signal's not safe, right? Pretty much all forms of
not safe. Telegram's not safe. Even the updated WhatsApp isn't safe. Like the protesters in Hong Kong kept using Telegram. They thought it was safe. Then some undercover cops and some officials
infiltrated
those groups, and they compromised, and they basically used the information against them. Same with LIHKG. They made like their own version of Reddit. They thought it was safe. It got infiltrated. Like the police and counter protesters like trolled them by brigade voting like all the wrong ideas, and then they followed it without question, and they fell into a bunch of traps, and it was a mess. So
you know this personally because you were there, right?
I knew this personally. There were anecdotes. I wasn't involved like firsthand, but I just kept seeing the patterns like play out, and it's like, guys, just get out of there. It's not secure. You're compromised. Stop using them. And they're like, no, we're Hong Kong locals. We know better than you. You don't even speak like Cantonese well. Like your English is so good. Ha ha. And then they just kept falling into these traps. And some of them are like got roughed up when they shouldn't, or some of them are like their safety is no longer guaranteed. And then some of them had to escape to like the UK. A few that weren't caught just worked their way out of Hong Kong eventually. Some that did like a minority like sold out. But I digress. The point is like Signal is not a secure communications platform. It can be compromised, especially if you're communicating in like a hostile location, like Steve Witkoff in Russia, being added to that group and communicating, and then I'm sure some of that got intercepted by the Russians.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't even
Anyway.
think about that. No, I didn't even think about that. Art being says already Russian assets to begin with. Jenny says, I
Yeah,
don't
they
think they
are.
care
So
about.
so like if you're even joking about that, Steve was probably communicating while showing it to like his Russian friend. We
Yeah,
don't know.
we
It's
don't know.
remotely
That's
plausible.
the thing is
It's
that
it's probable.
well, it's definitely plausible. I don't know about probable, but definitely plausible.
Plausible.
Um,
Allegedly. Be
allegedly,
careful with the
right,
language.
right.
Allegedly.
Right. The funny thing is for me is that because it's so hard to glean what exactly happened and what's going on. It's hard to figure out what the fallout is specifically. Um, if you're, I mean, if you're Jeffrey Goldberg, and by the way, Goldberg apparently received these texts when he was just shopping, and he didn't even believe that this was like he was like this can't be real,
Yeah,
right?
it's
And then
too
the
good to be
bomb.
true. You can't be that stupid. It's so stupid it's probably not real.
He's
Someone with his background, his contacts, and his know-how, he's like,
there's no way. Yeah.
no way. Yeah, as a professional, this is very unprofessional. This is just like trolling, classic trolling.
Right.
It's
It
so
was
stupid
so
it can't be real. But unfortunately, it's so stupid that it is real.
it is real. Hey Alex, hey Linda, hey Jenny. Yeah, so he receives these texts, right? And he's shopping. He doesn't believe that this is happening. He's like whatever, he dismisses them. Then
Right.
and this is a quote directly from him. Then the bombs started dropping. And he's like, "All right, this is real. This is happening." Um and we kind of he leaves the chat quietly, hinting at the group reaction. He highlights Signal's legal issues and sensitive info sharing, but he does this later in an Atlantic article. So I find his position particularly interesting because like what do you do in that position? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm sure he talked to his higher ups and to his staff about advice and ideas, and maybe he got legal involved before he published his piece detailing his weird involvement with that chat.
I, I mean, what's the take across the pond? I'm curious to hear that real quick, or not across the pond, or across the border, I should say.
I think people just here are just thinking it's stupid. Mark Carney already gave his take. He feels that this shows that the U.S. is unreliable, that they need to be a little more independent, and maybe revisit their security arrangements, especially intelligence sharing, which is also happening with other allies. It's so stupid. Anything could be compromised. I think if Ukraine was sharing information with the U.S. and let's say someone in the Trump administration starts chatting casually on Signal or Telegram, and somehow, some way, like if the information gets leaked to the Russians or someone gets infiltrated by a fake account, it's things
Yeah,
that you don't think are real, but it's stupid. And then I'm sure like the people that support Hillary are saying, "Oh, the Republicans and the MAGA people made a big fuss about Hillary's private emails. This is infinite. This is significantly worse, much worse, and less competent when compared to what Hillary did." And the worst part is, I don't think anyone in the FBI is going to be investigating because Trump has Kash Patel and his loyalists in charge of that agency. So nothing's going to happen.
oh, that's true. I forgot about that. Yeah,
Versus in the U.S., they actually assign someone to investigate as objectively as possible and like provide some initial findings on what the investigation like resulted in. I don't think we're gonna get that in this instance.
yeah. I mean, okay, it's interesting to me because like, can you? There's no serious argument for Mike Waltz not to be fired. It's an unacceptable screw up, and Goldberg's name likely appeared in Waltz's contacts because Waltz or his staff had been talking to Goldberg, right? So this might not be purely accidental, and that to me is the big claim. It suggests that Waltz had a relationship with a reporter, leaking info
Which is
deliberately.
fine. Walt had a professional career before that, like as an elected official and whatnot, and yeah, it's
Yeah,
fine. And then just to be professional, I guess.
and he accidentally basically BCC'd the wrong Jeff into the chat, and there's no
Yeah,
proof of that yet. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm sure he did. He just used like Jeff Goldberg. He probably used like an acronym or abbreviation. And he just put the wrong person with a similar spelling.
Yeah, but what's interesting is just watching how the populist sort of right are not circling the wagons for Waltz, right? A lot of progressive commentators and independent journalists have been emphasizing the gravity. They've been highlighting this hypocrisy angle, i.e., pointing out how the Republicans made Hillary's emails, a 4-year scandal, but now they're
Right.
downplaying this, right? So I know some people have been drawing parallels to the Jack. Gosh, how do you pronounce that guy's last name? Teixeira, whatever. His
Teixeira,
Discord
yeah,
leaks.
Teixeira.
Yeah, they said that that a 21-year-old airman leaked secrets.
Yeah, on Discord, yeah, that guy who was trying to impress some people, and then he leaked a bunch of defense information about Ukraine in a Discord chat. The Russians took it, and then they caught him. He sent like 15 years or something to that effect.
Something
for
insane,
leaking, like state secret, like the national security.
Yeah,
and I think Ukraine suffered the most.
And what's insane about this? Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say that kid was just trying to be cool and impressing the wrong people, and then, yeah, he's an idiot.
Yeah, but that's the point, right? Like if you compare these two, like these are literal war plans. Like it's a whole other level, right? If Goldberg hadn't gone public, I mean, would the American people even know this happens? Probably not.
No,
right?
he was doing the right thing. I'm sure it was difficult, just given the nature of what's been leaked. I'm sure he had meetings and calls with his manager, the managing editor, or like the person on top of him, the legal department at the Atlantic, maybe one or two subordinates that had experience in these situations, or maybe some former colleagues and contacts, and then they made a decision and they published a piece, and then as a fault, they published the entire conversation in context.
Yeah, but that's my point. There's a trust issue here, right? Yeah. On the lighter side, the independent media has kind of amplified the meme cycle, so that's been pretty funny. But it's just insane. But a lot of outlets and commentators are kind of split. I know, you on the populist right, they're pretty harsh on the incompetence. One of my favorite journalists out there is a guy named Sagar Anjadi. He's very harsh on the incompetence, and then a lot of left-leaning independents are basically saying, "Hey, we told you so," right? And nearly everyone outside of Trump's immediate circle agrees it's an epic fiasco, or to quote Pete Buttigieg, the highest level of fuck up imaginable.
Yeah, the former Secretary of Transportation and Senator. Yeah, he's saying that. Yes, former mayor and the Secretary of Transportation. Yeah, Pete Buttigieg. And then you have some of our chat art being is basically saying that Goldberg showed more respect for security than the cabinet and Trump administration, which is true. He's also pointing out that Goldberg's probably gonna get death threats, which I'm sure that's why
absolutely
he took the advice he did, and is probably living like just looking behind his shoulder. Hopefully, the Atlantic has given him some security for a period of time. I don't know, but yes, but he did the right thing as a journalist and a professional.
For me, it's what I struggle with is some of the things that you talk about, which is like, hey, was this leak truly an accident born of incompetence, or is there a deeper story here, like some sort of internal rivalry, or was someone trying to blow the whistle?
We don't know yet. We just have to see how this plays out. But
just how do you accidentally add a journalist to your top secret war chat?
Yeah, it's probably just incompetence at face value.
Occam's razor. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's just, again, this administration versus the previous Trump administration didn't have any competent officials backing him. There were no so-called adults in the room. It's just a bunch of loyalists that may or may not have the level of experience or professionalism that's needed. I hate to say it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the case. I mean, this is a case study in 21st century communications challenges, right? If is using an app like I use Signal, you and I use Signal to figure out this
Yeah,
freaking
but
line.
we're not cabinet level like ministers
Yeah,
or secretaries
right,
that are in charge of information that could get someone killed if
right,
it's mishandled.
right.
Those people are, and they could have gotten someone killed, like a serviceman, like a intelligence asset, or an ally, or
You know,
civilians, like most of all, like depending on how it's mishandled.
and by the way, shout out to Alex Perez. Alex is great. He's here. If you Alex, you need to send me because I don't know your Substack off the top of my head, but Alex is also a great political commentator. And I don't know if this is true, but he's a cartoonist, or maybe I'm getting you confused with someone else. But I usually enjoy Alex's takes, so go check out Alex's stuff.
Yeah, it's Alex
Um,
Ardaby. Is that him? Like,
Alex Perez, that's who I'm talking about. Yeah,
yeah,
but
because I'm seeing like the handle Arby. I'm not seeing Alex Perez.
oh, Alex is here. Hi, Alex. But what I was saying is
Okay.
it's you know on the one hand, encryption offers privacy. Like you said, it's not a classified channel,
No, it can
right?
be
And
hacked. If it's hackable, it can be hacked.
so,
If enough like hackers and enough professionals like just drill down, they can probably
but but shouldn't there be a
break through.
policy? Well, shouldn't there be a policy? Like, should officials be allowed to discuss sensitive military ops on their personal phones? I say no, but
No,
that's
they
the question
should
I'm
use
curious.
secure phones or secure like platforms to do, or secure chat like call.
Yeah,
They have like specific like tools and venues for these things.
yeah.
This
Hi,
isn't like
Eileen.
a casual
Hi,
discussion
Arcana.
on whether to accept an advertising pitch or not on like a WhatsApp or like a Teams chat. This is like basically life or death, and it can make or break the world depending on how it plays out.
No, I agree with that 100%. I mean, this is I think a good opportunity to discuss how government adapts to new communication technology. This is a broader governance issue. I
Yeah.
don't think like in my right mind I would never talk about war via bro. There are some things I don't want to talk about over the phone that are
Yeah,
less
I think
sensitive than bombings.
basically the government, if they haven't done this already, is just basically make a closed source proprietary
Yeah,
software that they use on government vetted phones. Don't use open source because that can be easily figured out. Or just do it the old fashioned way. Meet at a specific venue with agenda, talk about it, just like delete the agenda, just keep it classified for a certain amount of time and keep a copy in case anyone needs to know what exactly happened for accountability purposes. Just don't like copy and paste things from your computer or from your work email into a signals chat and just casually talk about it as if you're like planning like a football game or a barbecue.
I
Like,
mean,
come on, guys.
I mean
This is
the
not
account.
amateur hour. Lives are at stake.
I mean, Leon Panetta. I agree with like Leon Panetta and Jody, who basically suggest someone should be fired. You know, no one has been fired. Should someone like Waltz or Hexeth resign for such a breach? I
Yeah,
think so.
Hegseth. He was the one who, I think Waltz probably just for inviting someone who shouldn't be there in the first place.
Right.
Hegseth, yes, he was basically cutting and pasting classified information casually into like a
Jesus
mobile chat.
Christ. That
You
can't be. Is
don't
that
do that.
true?
Like he
That
put, yeah,
can't
it
be
was
true.
classified. That's why the Jeffrey Goldberg, what the editor in chief was just like
No.
scared of like hesitant about like discussing the details until or even publishing his piece until after long after the
Hi,
fact after he's
Patricia. Hi,
been
Tracy.
cleared
Go
after
ahead.
he's cleared by legal because I think
Mhm.
there's a legal implication if he like talked about it or published it too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know,
sure their legal is involved or had to review carefully with like
no, legal is very much involved. I mean, there's
they
let's
have to given
forget
what's happened.
the Records Act, the Espionage Act question.
Yes.
You know, the Clinton. There's Trump's own classified
Yeah,
docs
yeah. Let
case.
alone like breaking like federal law just by talking about what he saw or reporting
Right,
it about it.
right.
But yeah,
Like
I'm sure it's fine. They checked it checked out as far as their
I
legal
mean,
team was concerned. But yeah, Hegseth should not
he's
be cutting
yeah.
and pasting that kind of information into like a group chat on a not that secure
So,
communications platform.
so now we ask us like, okay, from the Records Act, is the administration going to hand these signal texts over to the National Archives
No, they're
which is required by
self-deleted.
law, which
Yeah,
is required by law?
but the texts are like self-deleting, so
Then they're in violation.
yeah,
I mean,
they're
it's not even
automatically because like Signal self-delete. That's why people like it. You can just talk about whatever, and then it deletes itself after a set period of time. I think
right.
Telegram does that, but I'm not sure if that's really the case.
I'm not sure if I don't think Telegram does. I think you can set it so that Telegram does do that,
Yeah,
but
because a lot of
I'm not
crypto people like use it to like do deals, but
correct.
they
Correct.
claim it's safe and it's secure and private. But I have doubts.
I also have doubts. No, there's that is one of the foremost issues. It's also I mean, is the administration going to hand if they're in violation, Congress is going to have to subpoena those messages, though they're now public, right, via the
Yeah,
Atlantic.
in practice, it's like in theory they're supposed to, but if Congress is mostly loyal to Trump
Yeah.
and they're mostly acting as a rubber stamp Congress or rubber stamp Parliament, just approving whatever Trump like throws at them, then probably not. Maybe some Democrats will assert themselves, but
I mean, if
it
this
could
were
go
a
either way.
Democrat, if this were, I mean, if people who follow me and who talk to me a lot, and you know this too, Canadian, they know that I'm pretty like even-handed when it comes to my criticism. You know, I have a lot of criticisms of the left,
Yeah,
and
the
the
establishment's pretty much complacent. They are.
no. But
Yeah,
what the reason why I'm saying this is I'm pretty balanced, and this is a moment where I would like to people to because I get knocked a lot in the comments about me being unbalanced. But if this were a Democrat administration, would the GOP be calling it treason? And Lisa Murkowski basically admitted that they would,
yes,
and
they
I think
would.
it's worth discussing
No, it
that
would.
political double standard. Go
They
ahead.
would be
Sorry.
calling. They would be calling for like Harris's head if she did this, if she was
Oh,
president, or Biden, especially Biden.
100%,
But
100%.
because it's Trump, and I think some of the people, like even Mike Johnson, like he said it was, oh, it's just an honest mistake. He like
From
brushed it off.
Colorado Senator Mike Johnson,
No, the Speaker of
or
the House, Mike Johnson from.
oh, my bad.
Yeah, he's a Trump loyalist. He just brushed it off. He seems
Okay.
like a nice guy, but he's just blindly following MAGA and Trump for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
Like, just the way he talks, he seems like a very nice guy. You talk to him, and he seems very approachable, but just the way he's like conducting himself is just. Ugh.
It's nuts. It's one of like I said, it's one of the most. I mean, again, Republicans were very aggressive when they went after Hillary and Joe Biden, and I'm no. If you follow me for a while, you know I'm no fan of Hillary Clinton, but this defensive stance right now, like, I mean, what's the principle at stake? And then the other thing I'll ask, like I've thought about is there's a lot of political spin happening. It's insane. You know, the messaging from the Trump world is basically like calling it a hoax, focusing on the optics.
They're claiming it's not true. It's all by design. It was not an accident or something to that effect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
just trying to gaslight people. And then the reality is, there was a mistake. Someone got invited when they're not supposed to. Then people were talking about things that they're not supposed to be talking about in that chat.
right.
And then classified information was being cut and pasted and shared on that chat when it's not supposed to. And people that were on that chat were not necessarily in secure locations when they were having those communications, which again, they're not supposed to. This whole thing's a mess.
Yeah,
at face value, just looking at it from that standpoint, like.
But my whole thing is are Trump and his allies more worried about the actual security breach or the PR damage? So
I think Trump is like someone who likes to be seen as competent, likes to be seen as professional and
sure
a stable genius. So it makes him look incompetent because he hired those people. And then from a security standpoint, I think that's secondary for Trump because he's already compromised if the allegations about him being a Russian asset are true. So that's not relevant or to him. But for everyone else, the security implications are just horrific.
I mean, the thing of it for me for downplay, like even downplaying a breach like this to me might be a security risk. Like, so it
No,
might
it's
discourage.
like security is an understatement. It's a serious problem.
It might discourage. To me, we might discourage future officials from coming clean about mistakes if the instinct is to cover it up or minimize it. And then also, like, as we've discussed at the beginning of this cast, is the leak harms U.S. credibility abroad. You know,
No, it
like,
already did. Like
go ahead.
no, it already did. Like we just talked about earlier. Like
Yeah,
Mark Carney already spoke out. I'm sure there's other world leaders that have spoken out or discussing in private with their allies and like advisors. So
I mean,
it's
this
already
is.
happening. It's just they're not going to make a statement right away until they get all the facts because
I
it
mean,
just happened so soon, relatively
this
recently.
this is just the dumbest. Like everything about this political decade has been dumb. Everything about what we're talking about right now is dumb. Like
Yes,
this this is this flips so many prior narratives. Um, it's ironic because Trump campaigned on Hillary's emails and claimed he'd be tough on leakers. Now we just have a self leaking, and
no,
in
and he also campaigned about being more competent and not senile like Joe Biden or actually caring about day to day needs from the average American.
And in 2019, Trump tweets that Hillary should be jailed for gross negligence under the Espionage Act. So
Right.
by that standard, does his staff meet the gross negligence bar? Right? Would Trump's own
He
Twitter log
does, but
apply to,
someone needs.
to his team?
Yeah, he does, but they need to like make a case for it. It's
I
just
just,
because
I
the
just,
FBI is not going to go after him because Cash is in charge and he's a Trump loyalist.
you know,
Some of the agents that want to do it independently are going to get like blocked or stopped in some way, shape, or form if they try to do it independently.
I mean, yeah, like SignalGate, at least compared to EmailGate or even DocumentGate, right? Trump's own Mar-a-Lago files case
So that
or
was pretty
like
bad. He left hard copies in Mar-a-Lago. He didn't return it,
that.
and then no
I
one
mean,
cared. No, like
I mean, and well, that maybe that's what's going to happen is no one is going to care. This is just going to happen, and no one's going to be interested in it. Like, well, that'll be it. I don't know. I'm not sure. Um, so just it's nuts, man. It is nuts.
dumb.
I will. It's dumb. It's so dumb, and it upsets me that I have to talk about it. That we have to talk about it because there's so many other interesting things
No, it's a
happening
current
in the
event. We
news.
can talk about the provision the ceasefire in Ukraine about stopping attacks in the Black Sea, or
Yes,
you can talk. We could
Medicaid
talk
is
about
big.
we could talk about the Canadian election. We could talk about the boycott,
But that's why
U.S. movements in Europe and like in Canada. That's
that's
actually
why
hurting the U.S. like tourism and some businesses.
I'm like, okay, what's actually happening here?
You could talk
Because
about insider trading in the U.S. when it based on Trump's like on and off about tariffs, which he's
but
supposed to do next in April 2nd again. And then now he's backing down from some items, and the stock market is just going back and forth. And people who are doing insider trading are doing very well based on their short selling or like, yeah, based on their trading, insider trading.
and
Yeah, there's a lot of things to talk about, Baz, and I'm sure the viewers or the audience feels the same way. But we're just
we have
talking about the dumbest shit like right now, which is people being irresponsible with like top secret military information
yeah,
and
yeah,
communicating in places that they shouldn't be or adding people that shouldn't be there in the first place.
yeah, and what's really there's just so much. There's so much political theater that's happening. There's so much downplaying that's going on. It's just it is um yeah, again this past decade has just been marked by stupidity. That's all that's all there is. I mean, the media has been pretty okay about it. Actually, I'm usually pretty harsh on the media, but I think Goldberg did a really great job in sitting on the info. I think withholding details for safety was the right call.
Yes.
Um, I mean, I know people in Trump world accuse him of being unethical. but by not immediately alerting authorities. But he did reach out before publishing the full
Yes,
logs.
he did reach
Got
out.
no response.
He did talk to like the legal team about doing the right thing, or how to best handle it.
Yeah, and I feel like the ethics question obviously is when you accidentally receive a government secret, what's your duty? But I mean, when you look at sort of Fox's framing versus MSNBC's framing, uh, I think he did all right when you compare to what could have been, what it could have been. And is the truth though getting lost between
Yeah, and then in
nothing to
his
see
defense,
here?
like Jeffrey Goldberg didn't think it was real. He actually thought he was being trolled or being scammed.
Yeah,
And he's like,
yeah,
"Oh, yeah, they're talking about these war plans. So if nothing happens around this time frame, I'm just gonna assume that all this is just like a big troll or big prank on me." Then it happens, like, "Oh God, they put me in this chat. Oh God, this is very real. This is so incompetent. Like, what should I do? Should I?" Then he just probably figured out like what he needs to do with that information.
yeah. And the social media trends are pretty fun. The Creed memes have been really, really. I don't know if you've seen any of the Creed memes. I should post some of them. But there's a narrative battle. One side is saying this is an epic fail, and the other says this is a nothing burger. And for me and personally, just intrinsically kind of enraging because it's just a war of words that I think people will probably have noticed in news feeds. And
No,
um,
that's what social media has done. It's degenerated discourse. You're either on like this side or that side. There's nothing in between. And
yeah,
then I've talked to you about this like offline. It's just that people actually thought I was a right winger because I was critical of Justin Trudeau at one point. Then people thought I was in the far left because I am critical of
oh, that's so
conservatives
funny.
and Trump. And then
They thought you
they
were
couldn't compute that I was trying to be objective, and I
yeah,
mostly lean this way.
yeah.
Like,
That's really
yeah,
funny. They thought you were a Trump supporter.
yeah, because I had the Canadian. Because at one point, anyone that waved the Canadian flag was automatically a right winger, according to Justin Trudeau. And then I was
Hilarious.
critical of him and other things, and people thought like that's why I was saying a lot of my like. So I was losing a lot of unsubscriptions at one point because I think the people that initially subscribed thought I was this. Then as things like the situation changed and evolved, and I started like writing these pieces, and people got upset and they just unsubscribed.
I get people who unsubscribe from me all the time
Yeah.
for stuff, but as you know, I'm totally fine with it. I'm okay with it.
Sorry,
Um,
Baz, I'm gonna have to hard stop like in 5 minutes. I have another like
that's
commitment,
totally fine. That's
but I'll
totally. Is
keep
there anything
talking
you
until
wanted?
then.
Yeah, is there anything you wanted to get off your chest before you jumped off?
No, I think the SignalGate is just the dumbest thing that has happened. I'm just glad that from what I know is that no intelligence assets, agents, and U.S. military personnel were like put in harm's way or killed from this like fuck up. But
And thank God.
thank God, so far as we know. But hopefully that is the case. That really is the case. But at the same time, this shows that the U.S. is becoming unreliable and is going rogue. So just expect the rest of the world to gradually unplug and go into non-American alternatives for
Yeah.
like basic foods, for defense or tech as things
Yep.
go on. It's just that's a long-term like damage
Yep.
combined with like the ongoing antics from Trump and JD Vance and the rest of the administration.
Yeah.
And the only thing that can stop them are the courts, assuming that their rulings are going to be enforced as intended, and if the Democrats can organize to do some meaningful pushback.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
it. But it was great, like chatting with you, Baz, as always.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
man.
hopefully, like your subscribers and audience are able to learn something from this discussion, and maybe they'll have a chance to add some more in like future like live events.
Yeah. Well, we do this pretty much every day. So I haven't been doing it the past couple of days, like I said, because I had pneumonia. But
hopefully you'll feel better.
Yeah, and then and I'm not sure well, I guess we'll just talk about this offline to see if you want to join in tomorrow. But But yeah, it's been a heck of a couple of days, man. Good
Yeah, I
luck.
probably will if like I just have to take care of some things prior in the evening session. But sure, like we'll see, or I'll just let you know.
Yeah, just let me know. All right, brother. Talk to you
All right,
soon.
talk to you later. Nice meeting
Be good.
everyone, and enjoy your week. Take care.
Yep,
Stay
yep, yep.
safe. Bye.
Bye bye. That was Canadian Returnee. Everybody, definitely make sure to go subscribe to him. He's great. And yeah, like I said, I mean, I do this pretty much every day. I haven't been doing it because I have been super, super sick, and I was also out of town. One of the things I also wanted to cover today, but a Canadian unfortunately had to jump off, is the Medicaid thing. The Medicaid thing has been super interesting to me. Nobody seems to be talking about the weird, move by Dr. Oz to possibly privatize Medicare, or it's actually kind of crazy. Let me pull up the clip because this should be pretty interesting to everybody. One second, I had it ready to go, but then if you've ever done one of these before, you know I had like a doctor's call come in, and I had to switch over to that. So one second, let's share. Let's do that real quick. There we go.
Dr. Oz's plans for Medicare.
Yes, Dr. Oz wants to privatize Medicare. Let's put up this tear sheet from Alexander Zajic investigation that we published over at DropSite, and we'll come back to this in a moment to explain the details of this privatization plan, which is not a harebrained scheme that has little chance of success.
He could actually do this. Oz too has gotten a lot of money from Medicare Advantage, so this will be really interesting.
Assessment is that he is quite likely to be able to actually pull this off if there's no resistance to it. But so if we put up B2, he cruised through his Senate confirmation hearing yesterday. It was this one of these interesting situations where the hearing room was busy doing some Social Security stuff and it couldn't meet there, so they met on the Senate floor. They kind of go off to the side of the Senate floor and they just kind of like hold a vote. And so he moves forward. And here is a bit from previously when they did have the hearing room. So we can roll B3 here.
Dr. Oz has years of experience as an acclaimed physician and public health advocate. His background makes him uniquely qualified to manage the intricacies.
It's kind of interesting to me how quietly this was passed through. Like if you looked at the major, or maybe just because I was in bed, just coughing up my lungs and dying, I missed it. But it was interesting how this basically just was rushed through.
Of CMS. At his hearing, Dr. Oz discussed his vision to ensure CMS provides Americans with access to superb care, especially our most vulnerable patients. I look forward to working with him, if confirmed, to accomplish this goal. I was also encouraged to hear that he will focus on modernizing federal healthcare programs, work to fix our broken clinician payment system, and will partner with Congress to achieve pharmaceutical benefit manager reform. There is no doubt that Dr. Oz will work tirelessly to deliver much needed change at CMS.
I bet.
I will be voting in favor of his nomination, and I encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to do the same.
Okay, so on the Medicare privatization scheme that Dr. Oz is pushing, we can
pretty much
B1 again.
And it is a privatization scheme.
Seconds so people can see this again. You can go read the full story to get all the details of it.
Well, and can I ask you? Yeah. You just said is pushing. Yeah. To that, like currently, this is something that he right now believes in his capacity at this job.
Yes,
he can push.
Yep.
Yes, and he does not need legislation to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's how. So if you're old or you know somebody old, you probably have heard of Medicare Advantage, which now roughly half of seniors on Medicare have what are called Medicare Advantage plans. So these are administered by private companies, which are given a set amount of money by the government, and then if they can deliver care, for the way they profit is by delivering care that costs less than that. The way they sell it to you is they say, we're going to do preventive stuff. we're going to make sure that you get your checkups. We're going to keep you healthy because to us, we profit if you don't use healthcare services. And in order to not use healthcare services, that means you're healthy. That's great. Like if that is how you keep healthcare costs down, that's what everybody wants.
Right.
People don't want necessarily cheap or affordable healthcare services. What they would like is no healthcare services. You don't want to be in the doctor's office or the hospital.
But that's not
what happens
happening.
in practice, though, is that
exactly.
it's much easier
so glad
to just deny people care. That it's because it's much harder to upfront make sure that people are staying healthier. Now, Medicare, actual regular Medicare, is not allowed to advertise. It's not allowed to go out and recruit people to its program. Medicare Advantage spends a lot of its money advertising its Medicare Advantage plans. And they say, join us because we'll give you dental and vision and we'll deliver groceries to you. Like they have all these other little pluses that when you're healthy, you're like, oh, that sounds great.
Right.
So they sign up for these privatized plans. And then
But then this is where, okay, he's probably going to go into it. This is when things get sticky.
they love it until they come to actually use the plan. You're like, oh,
It doesn't
that's
work.
not a network.
Yeah,
The only
it doesn't even work.
network person is like 120 miles from here. That's not covered. And so you get the typical private insurance nightmares. But even in your public health care plan, and now you're stuck in this. Now you're stuck in this situation.
Yep.
Dr. Oz has been a pitchman for Medicare Advantage for many, many years, like on his programs. And because Medicare Advantage, there's so much profit in signing these old folks up to it, they would go out and they would hire these pitchmen all over the country.
And you get like,
so look,
you can get like $5,000. By the way, he can get it $5,000 to sign up. Medicaid. Do not believe some people who Medicaid it can be very profitable. I'll say that.
Bring us somebody, we'll pay you.
Right.
Like you get a
thousands
finder's
of
fee.
dollars.
Like just same way if you sign somebody up for
profitable.
Squarespace or whatever on your podcast, and you get $10. Like sign somebody up for Medicare Advantage who watched Dr. Oz's show, we'll give you $2,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's an enormous amount of money in signing somebody up for Medicare Advantage. So he's been entangled with this for a very long time. He also, of course, owns like something like $600,000 in United Health stock, which he has said he would sell. They're a significant
Clear
player
conflict
in
of interest
Medicare
there.
Advantage. Now, the irony is that Dr. Oz's ability to privatize Medicare comes from the Affordable Care Act. Obamacare set up these pilot programs that said, because one of the driving impulses of Obamacare was how do we deliver better healthcare for less? And so they say, we're going to set up a pilot program. And if this private company or this nonprofit can show that it actually is making people healthier, then we will expand access to that program. And so there are a number of pilot programs that are running through what's called CMMI, Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, I think it's called. And what almost all of them are finding is that Medicare Advantage delivers worse outcomes for more money. Yet the private companies make decent, healthy profits off the top of it. That's what the pilot programs are showing. All Dr. Oz will have to do is come in with a rubber stamp that says successful and rubber stamp those projects. And it's a subjective decision that will be left to Dr. Oz
That does not
to
surprise
say,
me.
I find these to be successful.
Right.
And then boom, they're wide open to everyone in Medicare Advantage. And then the last thing they would have to do is just default every senior into Medicare Advantage and make them kind of actively move out of that into regular Medicare. And because Medicare has no capacity to advocate for itself, within a couple of years, you would go from 50% of people on Medicare Advantage to almost everybody on Medicare Advantage. And by then, once you're down to 20,
by the way, that's a great
20%
username
of people
F
on
them both,
Medicare
not
proper,
literally.
it no longer is able,
out.
doesn't have the economies of scale anymore, and it just completely collapses, and we're left with privatized Medicare.
And so my personal perspective on this is why our healthcare system is the worst of both worlds. You end up with the worst of a market system, or for quote unquote free market system, and the worst of a bureaucratic system when you have these halfway measures. It's just such a disaster. Such a good example of why it's a disaster. But also, Ryan, you mentioned this doesn't have to go through Congress.
Right, because the authority for it is vested in the Affordable Care Act, which already went through Congress.
That's interesting.
So the ACA says
That is
if these
super
pilot
interesting.
programs are successful, they can be then expanded by the head of CMS. And the head of CMS runs CMMI, which runs these pilot programs. And so Obama gave Dr. Oz the power to privatize Medicare.
Why isn't Doge taking it away?
That's actually a very good point. The Department of Justice is currently suing a bunch of Medicare Advantage scammers to the tune of
there's a lot, like
tens and hundreds of billions of dollars.
Oh, okay.
Like
That was $2 billion.
If Elon Musk and Doge, or whoever is running Doge, wanted to actually
Shout out
sniff
to
out
Emily. We're both
some
in the
real
same
savings
bed.
and some real waste, fraud, and abuse, Medicare Advantage is one of the first places anybody serious about going after fraud would go.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to just expand it to what Dr. Oz calls Medicare Advantage for all. So yes, if you're serious about waste, fraud, and abuse, this is the place to go.
Meanwhile,
And yet they're not. So draw your own conclusions.
Trump's the guy Trump picked to head up Social Security, his name is Frank Biznano. He's CEO of Fiserv, actually, which is an interesting sort of person to pluck from.
Yeah.
But anyway, meanwhile, this is just yesterday. He is saying that they will, restore any customer service glitches, but they're not going to cut Social Security. Donald Trump has said, obviously, that's his red line. But you can see how the Oz plan is pitched as something a little bit different.
Yep.
Right. That Donald Trump might not look at that and say, okay, this is cutting. Right. Like it's actually something that you could see being pitched to him and him going along with.
Yeah. And Trump is a pitch man. Like
Dr. Oz.
Yeah. The only reason
It's so weird that
Trump hasn't sold Medicare Advantage plans, nobody got in front of him with the idea. And maybe they did. We just don't know about it. But yeah, Trump would understand this. Oh, so we're going to offer them some surface level benefits. We'll mail you a toothbrush and you can get groceries delivered and you get dental coverage. Good luck trying to use that dental coverage, by the way. But it looks good. It sounds good.
Right about this because it's really
and then
to me.
We get to keep all the money by denying them care.
Yeah,
like it's like a classic scheme that a private equity company
Somebody would come up
and use because of this massive asymmetric warfare. On the one hand, you've got a private equity company with a bunch of McKinsey level quant geeks who have these spreadsheets in front of them and figuring out, how best to maximize their profits. And on the other hand, you have on the other side of the ledger, you have grandma and grandpa.
Yep.
Who are just going to get just annihilated in that competition.
Yep.
Like that's not a marketplace that's going to be fair.
All right. Well, that's one to watch because he's headed to the full.
That's fun. I kind of want to watch this this Disney thing real quick and then probably wrap it up. If anyone has any questions, we've got like 65 people here. Then definitely write it in the chat. Otherwise, I am going to just play this and then head out.
Shout out to producer Griffin because we are covering the Snow White story.
I'm fascinated
due to mine and Ryan's deep devotion to Snow.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the Snow White story just because, just how much like she was like, I don't know, there was so much criticizing of this girl, Rachel Ziegler, who's the star of the new Snow White that just came out from Disney. Like, it seems like they just have this like personal vendetta against this girl. Look, she doesn't seem like a likable person, which is fine. Most people in Hollywood aren't. I should know. I used to work in Hollywood. A lot of these people aren't likable, but the way they went after this girl was kind of insane.
Snow White and Disney, but you know what? There's actually some interesting stuff going on here.
Yes, I agree.
So let's get into it. We can put G1 up on the screen. This is a post from Variety, which says, quote, after Rachel Ziegler hit the stage at Disney's D23 fan event to introduce the first official trailer of Snow White, she thanked supporters effusively. In an next post, 1 minute later, she added an afterthought in the same thread, quote, and always remember, free Palestine. So that was what Ziegler posted, and Variety goes on to report many inside the studio expressed shock that she would commingle the promotion of its $270 million tentpole with any kind of political statement. The film's producer flew to New York to speak with her, but Ziegler stood her ground, and the post remained. Now we can put G2 up on the screen because it's going to get even more interesting if you haven't been following this. Quote, behind the scenes, this is from 60 Minutes.
Oh, Gal Gadot. Yeah, Gal Gadot probably was not happy with that. Gal Gadot, if you don't know, is an Israeli actress who played Wonder Woman. Whoops. I kind of fast forwarded a little bit.
Behind the scenes, this is from 60 Minutes, death threats towards Ziegler's co-star Gal Gadot, who is Israeli, spiked.
What's up,
and
Frank?
Disney had to pay
Welcome,
for
Frank.
additional security for the mother of four. Quote, she didn't understand the repercussions of her actions as far as what that meant for the film, for Gal, for anyone. So, sorry, that's not actually from 60 Minutes. That's also from the Variety piece. So that's Variety has like a kind of TikTok of what was happening behind the scenes. Not surprising at all that this is what's happening behind the scenes of Disney. But before we get into it even more, Ryan, I just want to say the Semaphore newsletter had an interesting tidbit about this. They said, as many people know, this movie is not doing very well at the box office compared to the amount of money that was poured into it. Despite a soft...
It's pretty expected that it wasn't going to make money. Like, I don't know who out there thought this was going to be like, you know, Rosebud level of cinema. Like, if you went into looking at this film and you were like super excited for it, like, come on, man.
Weekend opening, Semaphore wrote in its newsletter a couple of days ago, the political backlash isn't what seemed to hurt the movie's performance because Snow White overperformed in Republican-leaning areas and did well among Latino and Hispanic audiences. So, I mean, that doesn't quite rebut the point about whether all of this political fiasco had anything to do with why it had a quote soft weekend opening. It is getting absolutely trashed by critics, not like conservative critics. It is getting slammed across the board.
The Rotten Tomatoes,
for being
the Rotten Tomatoes reviews show it as doing really, really well. Like the critics trashed it, but like the audience reviews were really bad. But it makes me kind of wonder if I don't know. I feel like those things were planted. But we'll see, because on IMDb there's like a 1.9 like audience review, but on Rotten Tomatoes it looks like it's like a 74% audience review set. So I don't know. I feel like there's some plants going on.
Terrible, but it does. I mean, I think overperforming Republican-leaning areas kind of tells you that it's probably not the politics that's ultimately the biggest albatross for the Snow White film.
Yeah, and I would hope that nobody would even think that. It's like, come on, like, her tweeting "Free Palestine" is not going, to months later, really damage. I think the box office, whether or not the movie is any good, is really what's going to drive it in the end. We could put up G4 if we have a minute here. So this is Mark Platt. This is about the kind of pressure on people inside Hollywood not to kind of speak up on behalf of Palestine. Here's Mark Platt. This is him talking kind of about the Wicked cast.
Several members of the Wicked cast have been active, at least online, in their opposition to Israel, Artists for a Ceasefire. As someone who cares so much about your professional relationships and the product you're making on set, how do you navigate that?
I talk to people, and I think people are told that something is about something in a very reductive way, and it feels like, who doesn't care about innocent tragedy? Innocent civilians. No decent human being wants any suffering in humanity from decent people. What happens in instances as individuals ascribe their names to something where they're not being completely informed, and the messaging to them is they're suffering here.
Right.
We have to speak out for suffering. The message doesn't include there's also suffering over here, or there's suffering that was prompted or instigated by an act of terror or an act of evil, or there's a terrorist group in place that wishes for the annihilation of a whole group of people. That gets left out of the conversation. And so my way of dealing is, when the moment is right, is to have that conversation where it can be heard, and where what I'm saying can be heard, not in the midst of anger, where it can be heard and processed and therefore understood. And I feel good about those conversations that have been had.
Right. And so according to Variety, Platt had made that same pitch to her, say, hey, you really don't understand but actually, I guess they're all asking for it.
And we can
and she did not.
That's
she
rough.
Declined to take.
That's so rough.
we could put G3 on the screen as
What
well.
do we got? What do we got?
This is an interesting point. The writer of the article on the
Ooh.
Variety piece, familiar byline to people who follow Hollywood news, was Tatiana Siegel. Also, as this user on X points out, made the hit pieces against Melissa Barrera and Amber Heard. So
Amber Heard, though, kind of makes sense. I don't know if there's not a big fan of her.
Inside Hollywood type of analysis there, but still fairly interesting because your point about the pressures from a company like Disney, massive corporation,
huge.
which has millions and millions of dollars on the line with this movie. This is one of the more interesting, I think, cauldrons of political pressures, because Snow White, one of the reasons that it just, I mean, I haven't seen it. Your kids saw it, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons I think it's, and critics have pointed this out, one of the reasons it's struggling is that Disney had
Jeffrey.
We were sort of excited about.
Shout out to Jeff Melody. What up, man? Jeff joins us all the time. Jeff will join my chats, whether people agree with him or whether people disagree with them. Jeff holds the line. You want a guy like Jeff when you're out in the battle. You want a guy like Jeff in the foxhole. Whether you agree with him or not doesn't matter. The point is he's a dude you can count on. So shout out to Jeff.
About this movie in an era before the quote unquote vibe shift after Trump wins the election, and some of their movies that they had, I kind of intentionally framed to be, I don't want to say the word woke because I don't think that's right, but sort of signaling or gesturing at
a little wokey,
like the progressive
a little bit
cultural worldview. They were really excited about those projects, put a lot of money into them, and they mostly haven't done well. They haven't been great products, and again, that's because you have you have a corporation attempting to like latch on to this progressive messaging, and so it's incredibly confused because they don't really buy the sort of progressive class critique, but they can easily buy, you've written about this, they can easily buy the identity critique, wear it as the skin suit, and type of and start promoting these types of things, and so it ends up making for a really confused
message
product at the end of the day. Like this one, they took.
I call it the Jasmine Crockett method of politics. I don't know if you guys heard, but Jasmine Crockett recently called the governor of Texas Hot Wheels, which is a very funny thing to say. Objectively, it's an appropriate thing to say, but it is a funny thing to say. But it's kind of the same idea. This all like substance or all style, no substance approach.
The dwarves out, like they literally edited the dwarves out of the Snow White's movie because Peter Dinklage and others complained in the era.
Yeah, that was funny.
I guess
I'm not gonna lie,
call it like peak woke, capital P, capital W, that it was insensitive to cast actual people in that role. So they ended up using CGI, and that the effect of that on the movie has to be devastating. Like just that in and of itself, to take the live action human beings out of it and replace them with CGI had to have been insane.
And in a related scandal, and we can put this up in post, yesterday we covered the assault on Bilal Hamdan, the co-director, Hamdan Bilal, the co-director of No Other Land, by a group of settlers in Israel. So this is, just weeks ago, he wins an Oscar, goes back.
Oh, he got kidnapped.
It was gets assaulted. The Israeli security forces pick him up after this assault. Yuval Abraham, who was his co-director, journalist, a Jewish Israeli journalist at 972, who also won an Oscar and appeared with him on the stage, posted this morning. He wrote, "Sadly, the U.S. Academy, which awarded us an Oscar 3 weeks ago, declined to publicly support Hamdan Bilal while he was beaten and tortured by Israeli soldiers and settlers. The European Academy voiced support, as did countless other award groups and festivals. Several U.S. Academy members, especially in the documentary branch, pushed for a statement, but it was ultimately refused. We were told that because other Palestinians were beaten up in the settler attack, it could be considered unrelated to the film, so they felt no need to respond. In other words, while Hamdan was clearly targeted for making No Other Land."
Ryan Grimm is great, by the way. He's here on Substack. Go subscribe to him. He's one of the nation's last living just writers and journalists. a lot of his people got killed in Israel, so that's why he stands where he does.
Land, parentheses, he recalled the soldiers joking about the Oscar as they tortured him. He was also targeted for being Palestinian, like countless others every day who are disregarded. This, it seems, gave the Academy an excuse to remain silent when a filmmaker they honored, living under Israeli occupation, needed them the most. It's not too late to change this stance. Even now, issuing a statement condemning the attack on Hamdan and the Masafer Yatta community would send a meaningful message and serve as a deterrent for the future. That's Yuval
Hey, Sarb.
Abraham talking about
Welcome,
the
Sarb.
politics in the industry that we're talking about here.
I have an optimistic take on this, which is that the public backlash to the era of what felt like sort of stifling, especially to a lot of people, even a lot of people who are on the left. We talk to people who work in the entertainment industry. Like it seems like the public backlash to that may actually benefit everyone in just a much freer, more open environment in general. Like I was at Yale last night doing a debate, and it just was remarkable to me. I graduated from college only 10 years ago. The way that they talk about politics is so much more liberated than the way, especially people on the left talked about politics when I was there. It just
How
is.
so?
Like,
What do you mean?
They would ask questions. We did a dinner beforehand, and they were asking questions to me and to the other speaker that people would have been like couching with, you know, if it were
That's so
2012. Like,
interesting.
you
That's so
know, some people
interesting.
think this, and I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, but like, it's just like everyone could speak freely for the most part, and you know, nobody said anything like offensive, obviously, but asking legitimate questions. I don't know if you've noticed this actually. Like, it would be interesting for like
What do
an
you mean,
elephant in the
Jeff?
Zoom follow up. I feel
What
like
do you
there's
mean?
just generally people are taking a breath, and I feel like that's good for everyone.
There's sort of there's some elements that are still completely dug in.
I believe
Hasn't
that.
gotten there yet, but
Yep.
we'll see.
Yep.
Still
We'll
fighting it out
see.
in
We'll
some
get there.
of these specific islands.
Well, we'll see what happens. But anyway, Disney, what a company, what a time. This was fun.
We'll see the film and
This was fun. Yep, for me too. Shout out to everybody. Jeff, I'm not sure what you mean by your question, but definitely feel free to ask it next time I'm on a live. Much love to everybody. I'll do this again. I don't know when's a good time to do a live. I feel like every time I do a live, it's like the time as to when it works for people kind of varies. Also, a lot of the big names suck up all of the, the bandwidth on here. I don't know that we have people trying to grab attention. Jeff, maybe, yeah, I don't know. The reason why I believe it, the kidnapping story, Jeff, is because I'm hearing it from sources that don't really are pretty indifferent to the Israel, Palestine narrative. Like I'm someone who's kind of on the fences of that, or on the outskirts of that narrative. So that's why I give it some credence, but that's me. All right. But anywho, it's good to see everybody. Good to talk to y'all. I will talk to you later. Do.